Why did Jethro Tull fans hate this album, and why does it deserve another chance? Stick around, this is one of the most misunderstood albums in rock history, and by the end of this video, you might want to hear it in a whole new way. Jethro Tull was one of the most creative rock bands of the 70s. They mixed folk, progressive rock, classical music, and they did it the way no one else was doing. They had great albums, Aqualung, Thick as a Brick, Songs from the Wood. They cemented their place in rock history. But then came 1980. The band released A. This was an album that shocked fans to their core. It sounded different, it looked different, and even the lineup behind the music had completely changed, and many fans felt betrayed. But here's the thing. When you step back and look at it today, the album is much more interesting than people gave it credit for at the time. So let's break down why fans hated A in 1980 and why it actually deserves another chance, because it didn't even start as a Jethro Tull album. The biggest issue, it was never meant to be a Jethro Tull album. It actually started as an Ian Anderson solo project. The A title literally stood for Anderson, but here's where things got messy. The record label saw Anderson recording new material, and they basically said, hey, let's just market this as a new Jethro Tull album. The decision wasn't Ian Anderson's, it was just business. And it upset not only fans, but the band members themselves. Ian Anderson later admitted he regretted going along with it. Imagine expecting a solo album and then suddenly realizing it's being pushed out as a full band album, which is a recipe for disappointment. And that wasn't the only problem. The old lineup was gone. By 1980, Tull's classic lineup was history. Drummer Barre, keyboardist John Evan, arranger Dee Palmer, all of them out of the band. Bassist John Glasscock, he tragically passed away a year prior to this. The only two familiar names were Ian Anderson and guitarist Martin Barre. Everyone else was new. Dave Pegg stepped in on bass, Mark Craney on drums, and Eddie Jobson, best known for his work with Roxy Music and UK. He handled keyboards and the violin. Jobson's electronic style, especially the heavy use of synthesizers, transformed the band's sound. To longtime fans, it didn't feel like Jethro Tull anymore. It felt like something else wearing their name. And then came the real shock, the sound itself. For over a decade, Tull had been known for acoustic folk textures, warm arrangements, and medieval-inspired melodies. This album, A, took all of that and they threw it out the window. The production was sharp, it was cold, electronic. Synthesizers and electric violin replaced flutes, mandolins, and strings. Songs like Crossfire even flirted with disco rhythms, something even rock fans in the 80s even hated. Even Ian Anderson's own father wasn't impressed. He told Ian, too much synthesizer, not enough Tull. And he wasn't alone in that criticism, because even the lyrics were different. In the 70s, Jethro Tull often wrote about folklore, mythology, whimsical English countryside themes. But with A, Anderson shifted gears. He tackled the Cold War, nuclear threats, environmental destruction, and the struggles of the working class. These darker modern themes fit the new mechanical sound, but to many fans, it felt alien. The playful, mystical storytelling, their love was gone, and the image, this didn't really help either. The cover art showed Anderson with short hair, dressed in white and looking like some kind of space traveler. And on the tour, the band doubled down on the look. They're all wearing white jumpsuits and they kind of look like the band Devo. For a band once associated with medieval imagery, flutes, and a Robin Hood style mystique, it was a jarring shift. Fans saw the cover before they even heard the music, and they already knew this wasn't the Tull they had remembered. And just when things couldn't get worse, the press stepped in. British magazine Melody Maker ran a story titled The Big Split, reporting that old members had been dumped. Barre, the drummer, was furious. John Evan never spoke to Ian Anderson again. That drama bled into the fan base. Suddenly, A wasn't just a different sounding album. It felt like a betrayal. Fans didn't just dislike the music, they associated it with the breakup of a beloved band. So that's why fans hated it in 1980, but let's flip the script. when you take a step back today, this album actually holds up pretty well. First reason is because it was pretty bold. Rock music was shifting fast at the dawn of the 80s. New wave, electronic production, modern studio techniques, all of that were taking over. Ian Anderson didn't cling to the past, he embraced the future. The mix of flute, guitar, chops, and synthesizers, it all created something no one else was doing. It may have been comfortable, but it was undeniably creative. And the lyrics? They were more relevant than ever. Cold War fears, nuclear disaster, environmental collapse. Those themes haven't disappeared. If anything, they've only become more urgent. In 1980, fans found the lyrics depressing. Today they feel eerily prophetic. Anderson wasn't out of touch. He was ahead of his time. And the music itself, people overlooked some great songs. Crossfire is a sharp, energetic opener. It rocks harder than people give it credit for. The Pine Martin's Jig brings back Tull's folk spirit with a fresh twist. Working John, Working Joe, that's one of my favorites. It's a powerful social commentary on class and labor struggles. And Black Sunday, easily one of the strongest songs Anderson ever wrote or wrote in the 80s. It's very epic, moody, memorable. If fans had judged these songs without comparing them to Aqualung or Songs from the Wood, they might have appreciated them more. And here's where modern technology saves. Decades later, producer Steven Wilson revisited A and gave it a modern remix. The difference is huge. Instruments are clearer, the sound is warmer. The whole album breathes in a way it didn't before. Fans who once dismissed the record have gone back and said, wait a minute, this isn't that bad at all. In fact, some even call it a hidden gem. Maybe the biggest point of all, time changes everything. In 1980, fans compared A directly to the legendary albums of the 70s. Of course, it came up short, but judged on its own terms, it's clever, it's an experimental bridge between prog rock and electronic 80s. It's not Aqualung, it's not thick as a brick, but that's the point, it's something else. Today, that something else is what makes it fascinating. So why do fans hate A? It's because they didn't sound like the Jethro Tull that they were used to. And why does it deserve another chance? Because it shows a band willing to evolve, experiment, push boundaries. The songs are actually pretty good if you give them a chance. I think people just didn't like it back then. I think sometimes the albums we resist the most turn out to be the ones worth revisiting later. So let me know in the comments, what do you think? Is A an underrated masterpiece, or do you think it's still a weaker album? I struggled to get into this one. But after a while, after listening to it many times, I've gotten into it. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know where you stand. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss more deep dives into rock and metal history. Check out my review of Jethro Tull box set. I'll stick that probably right there. And that has the trilogy of albums. Actually, I have it right here because my copy of A was part of it. So I do a review of this whole thing in that video on the screen. So I'll see you in the next one.